Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ansari, Department of Political Science, AMU, Aligarh. In today's video, I'm going to discuss the welfare state part 2. And in this welfare state, we are going to talk about how the minimal state of earlier 17th century, it changed into 19th and 20th century into a form that was considered as the liberal form. So modern liberal states are not negative or police state, but they are welfare states. Now, the theory of welfare state is said to be a halfway house almost between individualism and socialism. Because according to it, apart from safeguarding the rights of individuals, the state also looks after the general welfare of society. Now, this theory regards the state as the servant of society, which helps in socio-economic, political, culture, moral, and intellectual development of the citizens. So, the state gives encouragement to art, literature, philosophy, science, education, and tries to check the struggle between the classes by controlling capitalism and appeasing the working class. So, the welfare state gives a political and economic concession to general masses and serves the aggregate interest of the capitalist class. So, England, the USA, France, Italy, West Germany, now Germany, the Scandinavian countries, then Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and India are some specific examples of liberal welfare states that we have. So, in this regard, we have already talked about the views of G.S. Mill and T.H. Green in my previous video, and here we are going to talk about the views of another exponent of welfare state, and that is Harold Lasky. So, Lasky had consistent faith in the democratic state, and he maintained that the function of the state has increased with the availability of the voting rights to more and more people. And he writes, saying that indeed it is of peculiar significance that the wider the basis of franchisee, the profound should also be the intervention. So it is not too much to say that the conferment of this right to vote upon the working class has transformed the state into an organization that is able to satisfy its citizens only in the degree that it is also able to correct the major contrast provided by unequal economic society. So he maintained that through the function of the state, social good can be realized. So, according to him, the state becomes an organization for enabling the mass of men to realize social good on the largest possible scale. However, Lasky does not entrust all the functions to the state, only the functions of general interest are assigned to the state. He further writes, saying that the state does not set out to encompass the whole range of human activity. Now, he further says that the state is regulating directly or indirectly to secure the common needs of the people, and that too at the level which the society as a whole deems essential to the fulfillment of its general end. And lastly, he refuses to accept that free competition of individuals' interest can bring harmony in society. So he writes, from the mere competition of private and selfish interest, we cannot secure a well ordered society. So he wanted to remove these free competition, or a kind of a competition which was generating antagonism and ill will among those two contending classes. So he openly supported the interference of state in economic affairs, and especially in the industrial affairs. And he further says either the state must control industrial power in the interest of its citizen, or these industrial powers will control the state in the interest of its possessors. Now, that was a prediction which sounds very true in later half of the 20th century. So the main problem of the 20th century in economic is economic equality and lack of equality of opportunity for the downtrodden. So now liberalism believes that the state can perform the function of reducing the gap between the rich and the poor by charging taxes from the rich and performing the welfare services for the poor. So, whereas Marxism, if we see, it maintains that the final analysis, the state is an instrument of rich classes, and all the functions of the state are directed towards the ultimate goal of total socio-economic order of the ruling class. So, Lasky believes that in liberal views, and refuses to accept that the state is a class instrument. And he firmly believes that state can serve the general interest, it can bring unity and harmony in the society, and it can reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. So the state is, according to him, is an organizing the collective life of the given society. And he believes that through the welfare functions of the state, poor people are given the required assistance. And he further says that there is hardly a function of social welfare undertaken by the government today, which is not an effort to provide the poor with some, at least, of the amenities of rich are able to provide for themselves, like health, education, housing, social insurance, regulation of hours of work and wages in industry, control of factory conditions, the provision of meals for poor school children are some of the outstanding examples in this range. Now, he believes that through these functions of the state, conflicts between the rich and the poor can be reduced, and the state wins the loyalty of the poor section of the society. So, he says, whatever is our view, the fact remains that at least since the Industrial Revolution, the continuous tendency of the modern legislation, not less in the new world that and then in the old, whether the new democracy is older one, has been to soften by governmental actions the harsh contrast which would otherwise obtain between the lives of the rich and the poor. So, the ability of the state to win the loyalty of its citizens depends upon its power to continuously soften the contrasts between these two groups. So, though Lasky admits the relation between the state power and the capitalism, he does not agree with this that the state is the slave of capital or merely a class instrument. And he says further that when the state concerns itself with the quality of our food, the protection of the child welfare, the safeguarding of unemployed youths against industrial insecurity, the provision of educational opportunities, now all these services provided at the expense of that minority, that is the taxpayer, the capitalist. So it is rhetorical exaggeration to regard a state as a class instrument. So he has a firm faith in the capacity of the state to check capitalism and profit of capitalist and help the workers. And he further writes saying that we may note further the way in which the state has invaded in the interest of the community, the spheres of commercial enterprise, the railways, banking, broadcasting, for example, which were formerly regarded as legitimate spheres of private profit making. So here the curb it has curbed monopolies at every turn in the interest of general customer. So here the state prohibit the practice of sweating in industry with legislations like the Factory Act, the workers' compensation, the limitation of the hours of labor, the prohibition of obnoxious material in industrial processes, all show a concern by the state to subordinate the profit making to the public welfare. So, in this way, we find Lasky he entrusts economic functions to the state and further maintains that welfare function of the state is the price the rich have to pay to the poor for their own security. So he believes that in societies where the state is performing welfare functions and serving the common interest of the society, a revolution can be avoided. It will not occur. So he writes, we should not therefore expect a revolution in any state where the class excluded from the full benefit of ownership is receiving a continuous addition to its material well-being. So Lasky strongly pleads for state intervention in the production and distribution of essential commodities. And in this regard, he goes up to the extent of advocating nationalization of production and distribution of essential commodities. So the production of essential commodities should not be governed by profit motive, but on the basis of social service and welfare. That is what he maintains. And the prices of essential commodities should be checked, and production of these commodities should continue even without profit at times. And with regard to the production of items for comfort and luxury, Lasky assigns the state with only minor functions like quality control and regulation, or concerning the working conditions, working hours, and minimum wages of the workers. So Lasky maintains that the major function of the state is to control production, thus bringing many benefits to society, especially continuity of supply, reasonable prices, and a guarantee of quality. So, enumerating the welfare functions of the state, Lasky further says the defense and police, the control of industry, social legislation, including functions, including functions so far-reaching as education and insurance against sickness and unemployment. So, the encouragement of scientific research, the operation with all the immense consequences of a system of currency, for example, the power of taxation, or the definition of the terms upon which men may, for their various purposes, associate together, the maintenance of a system of courts in which the state's own legal principles will be given effect to. So, no matter what person or body of persons may be involved, merely it is clear to take a rapid view of its outstanding functions is to realize the degree to which it pervades and permeates the individual life. So that is the level of state's intervention in the life of individuals. That is what Lasky supports. So Lasky's view with regard to the function of the state can be summarized by saying that the state must perform only general functions. That is the first thing he says. Secondly, he said the state coordinates the interest of various associations and institutions of society. And further, he says state must bridge the gap between the rich and the poor through its economic functions. The industries and distribution of commodities should be controlled by the state. Then the state must perform the function of social welfare, education, health, and housing. And then state must safeguard the interest of the working class and save them from exploitation. So rights and liberties are to be safeguarded by the state. However, Lasky, like Mill, has faith only in democratic government in which everyone has a share. So only liberal democratic states have the power and the capability of controlling capitalism and maintaining an equilibrium between workers and capitalist class. Now, we move on to the views of yet another exponent of welfare state, and that is the view of MacIver. Now, MacIver, he maintains the state is the instrument of social man, and there are many associations in society which are there to serve the different interests of individuals, whether in the form of a group or in the form of a society. So the state is one among the various associations, and it performs certain functions in society. And in order to perform these functions, the state needs power. And MacIver correlates power with the functions of the state. And as functions of the state are limited, he says the power should also be limited. So maintenance of rights is regarded as an important function of the state. And he says that the state has the function of granting rights. To exercise the function, it needs and receives certain power. And power should be limited, just as the function is limited. So being a pluralist, as we can see, he was talking about the existence of several other associations along with the state, and state not to monopolize the power. MacIver refuses to accept that sovereignty belongs to state and maintains that power should be related to the function. So he emphasized that other associations of society also perform important functions in society, and there should be a kind of a sharing of power with the state among these associations. So another important function of the state is to maintain unity and equilibrium in society. And he says that the state's own peculiar function is no other than this, and that is of giving a form of unity to the whole system of social relationship. So here, but like Mill and Lasky, he suggested that this function cannot be performed only by democratic state. He says the state can act thus as a unifying agent, but only insofar as it has itself undergone evolution towards democracy. So he maintains that state can be above the classes and can serve the interest of society at large. So the class state cannot serve the function of maintaining unity in society. Thus, being a liberal, MacIver assumes that the liberal democratic state can bring unity and harmony in society by remaining aloof from different classes. Now, this very notion is the basic assumption of all the liberal writers, as all of them rejected the Marxian notion of the state as a class instrument. So, the liberal writers believe that unity in diversity, harmony of interest among the different classes can and should be here in a society. So, in view of the changed economic position, McIver rejected the laissez faire or negative state principle. He writes that the growth of economic corporation has killed the principle of laissez faire, and consumer appeals to the state for protection against monopoly. Then workers are there, they demand safeguards for labor. Then small business, they cry against unfair competition. And while big business, they seek tariff wall against the foreign goods. So there's an ever increasing reliance of various economic classes on the state is accepted as a necessity by McIver, and he assigns various economic functions to the state. However, he does not want the state to perform many economic functions. So interference of the state is necessary in the economy, but the state must not take over many economic functions. So in comparison to present times, a liberal writer in, let's say, after First World War, around 1925-26, could not assign many economic functions to the state, as the crisis of capitalism was not as severe at the time as it developed in the later phase. So what the state should not do, that is what McIver talking about, and then he will talk about what the state should do. So McIver says that there are some functions which the state cannot perform properly. So he writes, certain tasks the instrument, that is the state, can perform, but badly and clumsily. So because we do not sharpen pencil with an X, so these tasks can be better performed by other associations of society. So the state should not control the opinion of the masses. So McIver says that the state should not perform the tasks, and the state should not seek to control the opinion of the people, no matter what the opinion may be. So there should be free play of opinion in society, and only then truth will come out. So he says opinion can be fought by opinion. Only thus it is possible for truth to be revealed. So force would snatch from truth its only means of victory. So force can suppress opinion, but only by suppressing the mind, which is the judge of the truth. However, the state can check those who are instigating opinions against the state or against the law of the land. So any kind of slander or opinions concerning the cases going on in the court. So being a liberal, McIver is concerned with freedom of thought and expression. So the state cannot control and should not control morality and religion. So McIver regards morality and religion as a personal affair and opposes the idea of the state morality or state religion. So being a sociologist, McIver is concerned with the customs and traditions of society. The state should not try to control customs because of this will weaken the state. And he says the customs, when attacked, attacks law in return. So attacks not only the particular law which possess it, but what is more vital, the spirit of law abidingness. So the unity of general will, that is what is affected by such interference of state in the people's customs. So the state should not control fashion, because fashion is a part of the culture which is beyond the scope of the state. Then further he says what the state should do. After explaining what the state should not do, McIver explains what the state should do. So he says to establish order, to respect personality. Now these are the essential tasks, positive and negative of the state. Both exponents agree on this point. So, and he further says the state is essentially an order creating organization, and the establishment of law and order are the main functions of the state. So law and order are traditionally associated, and we may regard order as essentially within the business of the state. But the task of maintaining order is not an expression of state's sovereignty, but it is necessity of common welfare. So it ceases to be an order as a condition of domination and becomes order as a condition of the common welfare. So being a pluralist, McIver maintains that the state should not interfere with each and every kind of order in society. Now, to doubt there is a vast field of social order which the state does not directly cultivate. So the order of custom, let's say, or order of morality, the order of business usage, the order of special associations, these are the areas where state should not interfere. So the state is mainly concerned with the common affairs and universal order of society. It's not the order for the sake of order, but for the sake of protection and for the conservation and development. So, according to McIver, thus there are three categories of functions of the state, and he has ordered them in the form like first he says the task of category of function involves orders, second the protection, and third the conservation and development. So, talking about order, he says functions concerning order include establishment of area, frontiers of political authority, establishment and control of forms of communication, establishments of units, standards of computation, measurements, values, etc. So, definition of political power and sphere of authority, that's another order it has to define. Then, definition of general rights and obligation of citizenship, personal and associations. So, services of social information, collection and arrangement of statistics, that are all that needs to be ordered. Then, talking about protection, McIver maintains that the function of the state is protection of the weaker section of society. So, to protect the weak instead of the strong is the whole of a modern reinterpretation of the state's function. So, among the functions concerning protection, McIver includes exercise of the police function or securing life and property, then maintenance and protection of authorities which are politically determined, then maintenance and enforcement of rights and obligations politically which are determined. So, protection of community against the encroachment of a specific association, against the monopoly and unfair competition, then assurance for the whole community of minimum standards of decent living. So, in respect of wage rates, then employment, upbringing of children, care for and prevention of social breakage. So, thus, under protection, McIver includes many welfare functions of the state. Then, the third function, that is conservation and development. Now, in this category of functions, he includes the promotion and regulation of physical condition, like hygienic requirements, then housing or occupation, recreational conditions, then of health or conservation and economic utilization of natural resources, then planning and general control of urban and rural development, establishment and development of facilities of education, then promotion of external conditions of opportunity, establishment of national museums, assistance in scientific research, a promotion of industrial agriculture or industries separately and agriculture separately, then commercial and financial developments in relation to general and not particular advantage, and the provision of means of injury into social problems of general significance. So even a pluralist like McIver has assigned so many functions to the state and is compelled to say that the proper sphere of the state is so vast that it is absurd to regard the denial of its omnicompetence as belittling it. So, but McIver does not want the state to involve itself into unnecessarily with the functions which it cannot perform competently. So he writes saying that the state cannot reasonably fulfill its own difficult task if it meddles with concerns which are not its own. So if it attempts those things which it ought not to attempt, or it will fail in the things which properly fall within its charge. So it will create confusion instead of the order, which in its fundamental work. So omnicompetence means in fact incompetence. That is what he concludes. So thus McIver suggests that in order to perform its essential functions efficiently, the state should not increase its functions unnecessarily. And further, he maintains that what state should do is what, as an organ of the community, it can do. So what service it should render is that of which it is in fact capable. So moreover, McIver believes that with change in time and circumstances of social needs, the functions of the state also change. So he, however, accepts three kinds of positive functions of the state, that is, cultural functions of the state, then some general welfare functions, and the functions of economic control. So, briefly, if we try to summarize what McIver had said about the welfare function of the state, we find that the state is an instrument of service of social man, and it is an association of society. So, as the state performs limited function, its power should also be limited. Then the state cannot perform all the functions efficiently. Only general functions should be performed by it, and the rest of the functions should be left to various other associations. Then further, he says that the state should not perform certain functions such as the control of opinions, morality, religion, customs, and fashion. And then the functions of the state are the establishment of unity and order. So, order is mainly for the protection, conservation, and development. And finally, he says the function of the state changes with change in the needs of society. So, what we have discussed today so far is talking about the welfare state from the perspective of McIver, from the perspective of LASKI. So, what they are basically here emphasizing is that the welfare function of the state varies, and it can increase to an extent where there is no difference made between compulsory functions and optional functions. They perform almost all the functions. So, with that, I come to the end of my presentation. And in this, we talked about the welfare functions from the perspective of Lasky and McIver, what they feel their activities should be when they talk about the welfare state. So, thanks for being with me and watching the video. Thank you very much.